If you want to learn Anivia for Season 11, then look no further. We'll be detailing everything you need to know from combos, tips and tricks, builds, runes, and much more. After this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to start taking over with Anivia, so let's not waste any time at all and get right into it. So first, if we quickly run down her abilities, her passive is Rebirth. When Anivia takes fatal damage, she turns into Anivia, where she regains full health but cannot act. After 6 seconds, if Anivia is still alive, then Anivia is reborn with Anivia's current health. Her Q is Flash Frost. It's a projectile that deals damage, slows units it passes through, and stuns on reactivation. You want to max this one out second. Her W is Crystallize. Anivia spawns a wall. You want to max this one out last, and oftentimes you don't even want to level it until level 4. Take a point in your Q at level 1 and then 2 points into your E at level 2 and 3. Her E is Frostbite. It's a simple point and click ability that deals bonus damage if the enemy was either hit with her Q or inside a fully formed ultimate in the past 3 seconds. You want to max this one out first. And then her ultimate is Glacial Storm. Anivia spawns a blizzard of ice that slows, deals damage, and increases in size over 1.5 seconds. At max size, the damage and slow is increased. You want to max this at 6, 11, and 16. So moving on to all of Anivia's combos now, the first one here is the most important for especially early on in the laning phase, which is a Q followed up by an auto attack and then an E. This is going to allow you to proc both Electrocute and Phase Rush if you're running those runes. The next combo here is pretty similar to the one before, but you're going to want to throw in your W before you use your Q. So if you have your W available, if you have it leveled, then you can look to block the enemy off with your W, and then you can throw your Q out to the direction where they're trying to walk around your W, and this allows for you to block off the enemy's path really well, and this is a great combo to use, especially when your jungler is looking to gank for you. The next one here is more of an advanced version of the previous combo, and it's to where you use your Q first and then follow up with your W when your Q is in mid-air. You can do this to reposition the opponent and knock them into your Q and just surprise them with the stun there. If it looks like the stun is gonna hit, you can throw your W out, knock them into your Q, and it can just allow for you to get some really nice trades off during the laning phase. If you don't have your Q available, or if you're in melee matchups, you can just do an auto attack E and then auto attack to proc your Electrocute throughout the early game. And the fastest way to proc Electrocute or Phase Rush is by auto attack E and then W. You don't even need to hit your Q to proc those runes, so keep this in mind. Like if you're getting ganked throughout the early game and you're running Phase Rush, if you can use this combo here, or if you just want to get a quick little Electrocute trade off, you can use your W to actually proc those runes. Once you hit level 6, your standard combo is using your ultimate first to slow them, throw your W down to block off their escape route, and then Q in the direction as to where they're trying to move to get out of your ultimate. Looking for flash pick plays with your W can be really impactful with Anivia. If you find the enemy squishy caught out of position, you know they don't have flash up, then you can look to just flash W, block off their escape route, or if you see like a couple members of the enemy team caught out of position, using a flash wall to just block them off and allow your team to engage can be a really good combo throughout the game. Alright, so moving on to a bunch of tips and tricks now. If you have your passive available and you channel your teleport before your passive pops, your teleport will continue to channel while you're in your egg, and this can be really good for you if you're getting ganked in the early game, you have your TP and your passive available, and you know you're gonna die. If the enemy doesn't have any CC to where they can CC you in your egg, then you can just teleport as you get low on HP and you're guaranteed to escape. You can stall minion waves from arriving to lane by blocking them off with your W, and this is going to allow you to keep the wave on your side of the lane. So if you're looking to set up a gank for your jungler, or if you just want to keep the wave on your side of the lane, this is a really good tactic to use. If you detonate Anivia Q when the very edge hits, it's actually going to deal less damage. If you don't need to hit the stun immediately, then you want to wait a split second for the slow to hit first and then reactivate the Q so you'll deal the maximum damage. Since Anivia's Q is such a slow moving projectile, it's really important you focus on when your minions are getting low and when the enemy is going to go in for that last hit. When they go in for the last hit, they're forced into a fixed position, so it gives you a much higher hit rate chance on your Q, and this is the best time for you to be looking to use it throughout the laning phase. Anivia's W can be used to cancel channeled abilities like Katarina Ultimate, Teleport, so keep this in mind when you're playing the champion. Your W can give you mana flow stacks and can also proc electrocute, which we touched on earlier when going over the combos, can also proc phase rush. So if you miss your Q when trading early on, then you can throw down your W after you auto E to proc that electrocute. Hitting an enemy with your W will also give you assist gold. So if you're roaming and you can't quite get in range of your abilities, your ultimate or your Q, and the enemy is super low, then you can tag them with your wall. Just make sure they don't get blocked off from your teammates. But if you just tag them with your wall, then you can pick up some gold for that assist. In certain areas of the map, you can actually trap the enemy in between terrain with your W so they can't move until your W expires. Your W and ultimate provide you with massive zone potential, so you can block off an entire entrance and keep the enemy team out of Dragon or Baron really easily. Your ultimate will continue running even after you pop stopwatch or Zhonya's, so you want to make sure you have your ultimate down before you end up using those actives. Anivia's ability to duo Baron past 20 minutes is really strong, especially if you have blue buff and you got a tank on your team. You can easily duo Baron at 20 minutes. It's really important that you're patient with your Q usage. If your team has some easy CC that they can land first, you should never just be randomly throwing out your Q. If you have somebody like a Pantheon on your team who can get in range to hit his point and click stun, let your teammates hit their point and click stuns first, or point and click CC, then follow up with your Q, and it's just going to drastically increase your hit rate of your Q. So moving on to Anivia's matchups now, if we take a look at the ban category, you have Lux, Vel'Koz, Victor, Xerath, Ziggs, and Azir. And there's one thing all these champions have in common, and that's long-range poke abilities. Long-range abilities are what Anivia does struggle with the most because she is a relatively shorter range mage. So if you're going up against a Xerath or a Vel'Koz, they can very easily just sit back, outrange you drastically, and they can just poke you throughout the, throughout the laning phase, throughout the mid to late game, and it's very difficult for you to walk up in team fights and get in range to use your abilities if these champions are in the game. So right now Victor is pretty meta, he's played a lot. Lux has a pretty decent play rate. I definitely lean towards those two champions as a ban for your Anivia right now. The Xerath, the Vel'Koz, Ziggs, and Azir, they aren't played too much right now, so I probably wouldn't recommend spending the ban on them, even though they are very difficult matchups. For the next category, we have the hard matchups, and these ones aren't as unwinnable as the bad matchups, but they're still very difficult. A lot of these champions do have very high mobility with the Ahri, with the Katarina, the Kassadin, so they just have very easy ways of dodging out of the Anivia ultimate or dodging away from the Anivia Q, and it makes it very difficult for you to deal with them. For Anivia's skill matchups, a lot of these ones here are either shorter range mages like the Annie, the Twisted Fate, or they're melee champions like Diana and Echo. With champions like Yone, Diana, Echo, if they try to jump onto you, as long as you're saving your Q, as long as you don't just whiff it, use it randomly, it's very difficult for those champions to do anything against you. You also have your wall to look to block them off later on in the game. So these are matchups that can go 50-50. If you're really good at your Anivia, if you know how to play these matchups, you should be able to win them. And then for Anivia's easy matchups, you're either going to see very short range mages here, or you're going to see a lot of melee assassins. So picks like a Kali, Zed, Talon, Kiana, really good for Anivia because number one, if you don't use your Q, if you're holding that, those champions can never jump on top of you, especially in a mid to late game fight. Because if a Kali jumps in, you stun her up with Q, you burst her out, and then you even have your Zhonya's and your passive. So it's so difficult for those champions to burn through you and to actually kill you, and it's very easy for you to burst them out if they try to jump in. So now if we move on to breaking down the complete build for Anivia, for starting items, it's either going to be Corrupting Potion or Dorn's Ring. Most games you do want to opt for the Dorn's Ring there, but if you're up against a more pokier champion like a Xerath or a Vel'Koz, you can go Corrupting Potion to give yourself some early sustain. For your early base, prioritize Tear, followed by Dark Seal, Amp Tone, and then Boots. For core items, your most DPS option is going to be Liandry's, especially against a tankier composition. It's going to allow you to deal a lot of damage over time in fights. You can opt towards Luden's though if you're up against a more squishier comp or you want some more burst damage. Everfrost is highly underrated right now on Anivia too. If you're up against a heavy dive composition, you want some more peel power, or you just want some more survivability with the extra HP that Everfrost provides you, then you can opt for this as well. This is one that I personally really like right now on Anivia, especially if you're up against an Akali or a Talon or any dive champion, because they try to jump on top of you, you stun them with your Q, you follow up with the Everfrost root, and they're rooted there for a maximum of 3 seconds, and they basically can't move or do anything and are just dead if they try to jump in on you. And then there's even Riftmaker as well, which a bunch of Anivia players are going for right now. So you really have a ton of different options here for your mythics on the champion, and it really just does come down to the situation and personal preference as to which one you run. After your mythic though, going for Sork shoes is pretty much what you want to opt for towards boots every single game. If they're very heavy like AP, it can go Merc Treads, very heavy AD. Going for steel caps can be viable, but Sorks are going to be the go-to in most of your games. And then going for Archangels as either your second or third item is going to be very core on the champion as well. Now for situational, if you're up against a heavy AD comp, or if you're up against an AD mid, AD jungle, you can rush a Seeker's Arm Guard. If you need healing reduction, you can go for a Oblivion Orb, but do not complete it into Morello. Just sit on that Oblivion Orb until very later on in the game to when you're out of item slots, then you can upgrade it to Morello. If you're snowballing, upgrade that Dark Seal into a Majai's. Against heavy dive comps, then you can go for a Zhonya's either second or third. So if you're up against something like a Zed, a Fizz, then I would definitely prioritize going Zhonya's second before your Archangel. So delay your Archangel there until your third item, pick up that Zhonya's second. It really just does depend on the game, on the situation, as to when you go for Archangels second, and as to when you go for something like a Zhonya's or a Demonic Embrace. You can even go Demonic Embrace second as well if you're up against a very heavy HP composition, if they're stacking a ton of HP, if they have like a Bruiser top, a Bruiser jungle. Grabbing an early Demonic Embrace there can be really good, especially if you go like Leandri's and Demonic Embrace, then you just have so much shred against those HP champs. Now, most of your games won't even end up going further than this, picking up a Mythic, Archangels, and then either Demonic or Zhonya's. That's going to be your core build in most of your games there, but if it does go further, if you're up against a heavy Magic Resist stacking comp, you can pick up a Void Staff. If the enemy team is very heavy AP, going for a Banshee's Veil as a third or fourth item is great, and then if it gets really late on into the game, you can pick up a Rabadon's there as your fourth or fifth item. Alright, so now if we move on to breaking down Anivia's room pages, there's a lot of different variations going around right now. So the first one we have here is the ultimate kill threat page with Electrocute. You're going to take Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collector, and then Ravenous Hunter. This is the most popular right now on Anivia. This can do very well for you in most of your matchups. If you're just looking for a cookie cutter room page to run every single game, then you can't really go wrong with this one. Now you can swap out Ravenous Hunter for Relentless Hunter if you do want some more added move speed there. It kind of just does come down to personal preference. For your rune stats, take attack speed in the top row there, take adaptive in the second, and then either armor or magic resist depending on your matchup. The attack speed is highly underrated there on Anivia right now. It's the highest win percent rune in that row. Reason being is because it allows you to CS a lot better early on, or it just makes your CSing a lot easier. It allows you to proc Electrocute or Phase Rush a lot more reliably, and it will also allow you to weave in maybe an extra auto attack when you're trading early on. And then for your secondary page, you can go for Mana Flow and Transcendence. That's going to be a little bit more early game focused because of the flat mana you're getting. Or you can go for Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. This one is going to give you a little bit more team fight power because of the mana you'll be getting back from kills in those fights. Now for more of a kiting setup here, you can take Phase Rush followed by Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm. This one's going to be really good for you if you're up against a very heavy dive composition, or if you're just up against champions who need to get right on top of you to deal their damage. Taking Phase Rush is just going to give you some really good kiting power. And then for secondary runes for this setup, you really can't go wrong with a lot of things. If you want more sustain, you can go for Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. If you want more of a scaling mid to late game team fight, you can go for Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. If you want more early game sustain, taking Biscuits and Time Ward Tonic with the Corrupting Potion is great. You can also even go for Boots and Biscuits if you want to accelerate yourself into an earlier mid game spike. And then for the final keystone option you can run, it's Comet. So this one you can look to take if you're up against those range matchups like a Xerath or a Vel'Koz, to where you're never really going to be able to get in range to proc your electrocute. So you can take the Comet there to give yourself some poke from your Q, from your ultimate there. Comet is actually the highest win rate rune right now on Anivia, which is kind of surprising, but it definitely does have some really good viability for her. You're going to be able to proc it a ton throughout the game. The consistency of it is really good on Anivia, because your ultimate and your Q do slow, which pretty much guarantees the Comet proc. So taking Comet there with Mana Flow, with the Transcendence and the Gathering Storm, and then for secondary runes, really anything that we just talked about for the Phase Rush setup, you can also take secondary here for the Comet setup. And then for summoner spells here, guys, to round things out, Flash is going to be vital for every single game. Don't take anything but that as your first summoner, and then follow up with either the Ignite, the Teleport, or the Cleanse, depending on the situation, depending on preference. So melee matchups is to where Ignite is going to give you the most potential. You actually do have some surprising early game kill threat with Anivia. A lot of people really underestimated. So taking Ignite in those either short range mage matchups or melee matchups is really good for you. Teleport if you're up against range or poke matchups, or if you're just new to Anivia, you're not really sure as to how you're supposed to play certain matchups out, then you can take the teleport there to give yourself a bit of a safety net, allow you to get back to lane if you do end up getting poked out early on. And then you can take the cleanse against super heavy CC compositions if you're up against, say, something like a Syndra mid, Elise jungle, Leona support. Then taking the cleanse there is going to be really important to just allow yourself to have a lot more success later on and not just get caught out and die instantly. So that is going to round out the ultimate Anivia guide for season 11. Hopefully this does help you guys out, and if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.